the Within Orb podcast. Come get Within Orb. Hello, my name is Jenn Zahrt, and welcome to Within Orb, a production of the Celestial Arts Education Library, a podcast bringing people together around the love of astrology, books. Join me as I interview people about the astrology books that changed their life and practice. You can support the podcast at withinorb.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Within Orb. I'm your host, Jenn Zahrt, and today I am here with Mj Patterson, the founder and director of the Halifax Astrology School.
Well, hey, girl.
How's it going with your school?
You know, it's going super well. I haven't done any big splash because I want to get it where I want it before I make a big hoo-ha about it. But we already have students, and yeah, it's using the same sort of base, the Moodle base that Kepler uses, but mine's more modern.
Okay.
But that's because I don't have to pay anybody to run it, because it's like I'm a geek, right?
Yes, you are a woman of all trades. I have a question, too, about the differences, actually, between the Canadian systems and the American systems. What are some of the new initiatives that you are putting through your school that are unique to your position in Halifax?
Well, I'll keep it brief, but there's a real big difference between, say, the States and Canada in this regard. We're not really a country. We're actually like the EU. So we all have these provinces that have their own flag, their own language, their own everything. So if you're like a teacher in Nova Scotia and you want to go teach in Alberta, you have to give up your license and then go and get another license. It's really like the EU. So we have something called a Red Seal program. And what that is you don't need it to practice, whether you're a hairdresser, pipe fitter, chef, carpenter, it covers all the trades. But if you decide to get one, everybody knows how good you are. You really show what you know. It has a delicious corollary thing where it doesn't have to always be by examination, which I find can block folks who are very good and very knowledgeable, but they kind of get to the exam and it's like a horse that won't go over the jump, but they use logbooks. So you can show what you know and someone can sign you off with a logbook as to, yes, this person can do this. So it gives people a lot more, because I have a master's in education, right? So I'm always trying to look at the student-centered kind of approach to this system. Anyway, long story short, we're building it.
That's amazing.
We started this year, and Ingi Losa is my partner in crime from Edmonton. And we have Melanie Joy from Niagara as well, helping us to cross the T's. So yeah, we're pretty excited about it. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, so when you achieve this milestone, will that put astrology on the map in Canada as a trade?
Yes.
Okay. It doesn't exist now at the moment.
But no, it doesn't exist now.
That is so cool.
We have about 5 years at least to go, because you have to, before you can apply for the Red Seal, you have to have a bunch of stuff set up. Like you have to have a certain number of schools, you have to have a certain number of people qualifying. You have to have what they call a set of core competencies, which we now have, although we're refining them, but we at least have built them. Thank you, Ingi. See, I have a Mars in Gemini. Dear God. So I can't do anything on my own, right? But Ingi has a Mars in Capricorn. So I phoned her up and said, honey, can I borrow your Mars?
There you go. It takes a village. And the cool thing about this is that you're also, what I'm hearing in this system of the Red Seal is that not needing to have an exam is, I just think that's so neat, because when you get a good grade on the GRE or the SAT, that simply demonstrates you're good at taking that test, and it doesn't actually show a different measure of intelligence. So I really appreciate that they're showing maybe like this log or the ground game as a demonstration of mastery, as opposed to sort of I can answer this test. Exactly.
And it lines up with the other Red Seal programs. So for instance, if someone's going to get a tick for changing brakes, they don't write an exam about it. They go and change brakes. And then God watches you and he goes, yeah, no, that's good. You've got drum. Now you got to do disc, because they're not the same, but I'll sign you off for drum, right?
Yeah.
Like that. So why shouldn't we?
That's a good point.
Because we like to sort of group ourselves in with, like, I don't know, the hoity-toity, that university bunch. But we are a trade in a lot of ways, We at least half of what we do, we have to learn by doing it.
Learning by doing. Now, I'm going to go way back to before I started learning astrology, because I'm going to ask you about when you began learning astrology. But here's the thing. This is something that not many people know. Before I started learning astrology, I read a novel written by my friend about a journey from Alaska to Halifax in an underground tunnel. I was about 13 when I read this book. And so I was fantasizing about taking this journey from the Pacific Northwest, where I'm located right now, to Halifax. And that's where I ended up meeting you a couple years ago before the pandemic. It was so amazing that I was finally on my trip to Halifax, and there I was visiting friends, and then you happened to be there. So it's so neat to have you here and sort of link up to that early stage of my own development with astrology. And so, yeah, I want to ask you.
And I learned all about spoons.
Oh, yeah.
You taught, was it triplicities, I think?
Was that at UAC?
No, this was in that little shop.
Oh, Blue Apples.
Blue Apples, yeah. They're no more, unfortunately. Yeah. But yeah, and you were teaching triplicity lords and explaining about spoons and explaining about the Almutin, and it was very cool. I think you did a slice. I think that one was just the triplicity thing. And then later on at UAC, I think you enlarged it and gave us the full meal deal.
For sure. Yeah. For me, it was a once in a lifetime trip, just because it was the first time. And this Halifax had always stood out in my mind as not only a really cool name for a city, by the way, like it's just kind of got a beautiful elegance to it. What I learned when I visited was that it's the belly button of Pangea, and that at some point, the edges of Nova Scotia touched every continent.
It is certainly true that even Cape Breton is actually a piece of Scotland.
See?
It floated across and connected with the mainland is not, but Cape Breton Island actually Scotland, geologically,
And there was a cliffside west of the city that just had amethysts falling out of it, which I thought was beautiful as well. So one of the most dangerous places to be near a tide, by the way. So yeah, be careful out there.
The tidal boar.
Yes.
I used to work in tourism, and I told everybody it was a giant pig. Which was mean.
That's almost like a Studio Ghibli character, right? A tidal boar.
A tidal boar. Well, it is, in fact, a giant wave that comes in. It's like a mini tsunami, right? It's a giant wave.
And it's fast. So you better not be near that cliff.
A riptide. If you're still on the rocks at that point, it was really nice knowing you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So back to the start. Let's go back into what is the first astrology book that really caught your attention and brought astrology into your life?
So it's Debbi Hyphen.
Debbi Hyphen? Who's Debbi Hyphen?
My teacher was Axel Harvey, who's from Montreal. He's passed away now. And I don't know how I got so lucky as to be one of his students, but somebody up there lined me up in the right place at the right time. And that's what he used to call us, Debbi Kempton-Smith. And of course, it has a hyphen, but he just called her Debbi Hyphen. I think she was from New York. She's passed away quite recently. Why do I love her book? It's called Secrets from a Stargazer's Notebook. Back when I purchased it in Lord 87 or something, it was purple. It was a Bantam book, but it was sitting on the rack with the back showing and the front not showing. And on the back, it said, The Definitive Lazy Person's Guide to Astrology. And I said, someone wrote a book for me. So I bought it. And it reads like fluff. Like when you read it, it reads like cotton candy, but it's meat from stem to stern. That woman knew her oats from her onions. So if I'm trying to get someone hooked, it's like a gateway drug.
The chapter titles are super irreverent. She has such an attitude in the book. It's very sassy.
And fun to read.
Yeah. I wanted to poke in a bit. There's a part she writes about Rob Hand. Did you focus on this?
No, I missed that.
Yeah, at the very end, she's got this top secret. What is it? How to win at nearly everything, achieve nirvana, and screw your enemies with black magic astrology. And she she was visiting Charles Jane. He was so smart that the Department of Defense had to build NORAD just to keep an eye on him. He's a spiritual math freak, outspoken, fearless, charming, endlessly kind and crazy, da-di-da. When my first invitation came to one of the Jane's infamous parties, Rob Hand, no slouch himself as far as astrologers go, gave me a ride up to Monroe. As we wheeled into the driveway, he stopped the car and let the engine idle for a moment. Before you go in there, you'd better look out for Vivia, he warned me. She keeps it very quiet, but she's the best chart reader in the country. Nice one, Rob. I just love walking into parties paralyzed with awe. I love these anecdotes. It's so neat to see that, you think you're reading Secrets from a Stargazer's Notebook, and it's also the social history of our colleagues,
100%. And I didn't have the privilege of meeting her, but I know people who did. And she's just as good, as it were, off screen as she is on screen or on the pages of the book. Wherever she is, she's having fun. I would say that because she's passed over. So,
Very cool.
She and Axel are probably having a glass of mead together.
There you go. And he's still calling her Debbie Hyphen up in space. Okay, cool. So that's the book that really put astrology on the map for you. Where did you go from there?
Well, I have that Sag rising, right? I'm an experiential learner. So books are wonderful. I'll read a book a day if I can get my hands on one. And if the gods give me enough time to sit and read. And it's also true that when someone shows me or lets me stand next to them and do it kind of kinesthetically, I do better. So actually I'm being really straight up with you here. One of my most exciting recent sort of ahas or learnings was with you, actually.
Oh.
I found you to be an excellent teacher. And because you used spoons, you made it very physical. And so for someone who's kinesthetic, it was extremely easy to grasp and to apply. Plus, you did tons of examples of people in the room. So for me, that was a plus. So I would say I'm a mix and a match girl. So I'll read it in a book if I can get my hands on it. But if I can go and take a class, I'll do that as well. And you would think after 40 years that I've learned it all, but hell no. That's the beauty of astrology. There's always something new to learn, right?
Right. And I mean, even in your own chart, you're like, I've been looking at this for 25 years and I just saw that. Oh my gosh, right? Yeah.
Adam Gainsburg read my Venus in a way that nobody had before. And it blew me away.
Yeah.
Because everybody else was like, oh, you have a Venus in Libra. Oh, isn't that lovely? It must be so nice for you. And I'm like, no, not really.
The book you're talking about, he's written In the Light of Venus, which is actually one of the main books that I recommend to my students. It's brilliant the way that he can unlock a Venus placement like he did for you.
He really did.
Yeah.
There was another woman in the room with my similar placement, High and Bright, and After the Sun. And we actually connected at the end of the lecture and cried and hugged. It was the first time either of us had felt understood from a Venus point of view, right?
Yeah. And when you can meet that phase buddy, there's just nothing else like it because it's a level of synastry that you connect in the world in the same way or fail to. And you can just be with that person. And it's like water. It's like swimming, you're just on that exact same wavelength. And so all the static that keeps you from really, really bonding with somebody is gone because there's just a total resonance of
But yeah, I agree. 100%.
Yeah. And it also, on the other side of that, makes me understand how to understand those who are a phase mismatch, right? Because then you're like, oh, that's why we don't get along.
That's why you feel like sandpaper up my nose.
That can be. So what are some of the books that you would take with you if you were stuck in,
like a desert
I don't know. Island. I was going to say desert island, but I'm like, oh yeah, but you've got like PEI just up from you. So like if you got stuck in
no desert, no how.
No, but it would just be remote, right? Like what would you take with you if you could only have, a little satchel of astrology books?
Obviously an ephemeris for sure, right?
Oh, yeah, that's a given. Everybody gets to keep the ephemeris.
Kids out there, that's a book with planetary placements like you get at, astro.com. But us old people, we use books. I'm just saying. So I take an ephemeris. I would take the green book from Marion McEvers, The Only Way to Learn Astrology. It has a few different things in it, but the juicy things it has in it are ruler of the first and the first, ruler of the first and the second, ruler of the first and the third. And yeah, okay, there'd be people out there jumping up and down and saying, you can't treat astrology like a cookbook. Well, no, you can't. And this stuff is gold. This is from, an entire career of experimentation and seeing client after client after client and noticing patterns and then writing those patterns down. It took my astrology to a whole new level. As a youngster, when I was doing sun in house, sun in sign, and then I got the rulerships and it was just like, my head was blown. And I could see it in my clients too, the recognition, they would light up, they would feel seen by that. So I love the green book.
Very cool. Yeah, Marion was not only the founder of UAC, but she performed a lot of research on so many charts. We have her research here at the library. So the charts that get condensed in this are actually present in the closet next door to me in binders. I like to say when people take a tour of the library, and here we have our binders full of women, because it's all of the charts and biographies that she printed out and collected and did her research on.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
Yes, you've done a really important thing by founding that library.
Thank you.
Do you want to spend your professional life telling people when to have sex? My name is Nicholas Matz-Alsop, and I'm the author of Fertility Astrology. Join me online this fall for the Fertility Astrology Intensive. This course is a first of its kind, consolidating all the astrological techniques you will need to be a world-class astrology and fertility consultant. I'm here to enhance your astrology. We are astrologers who want to make the most of the situation for yourself and your client. And we're going to share with you the things that have worked in my practice in the last 20 years. At the end of 14 weeks, you're going to be really confident when somebody asks you, do you think there's a chance I'm going to get pregnant this year? You'll have something real to tell them. But especially, come, let's talk about sex, baby.
To learn more and register for the September 9th start date, please visit our website at CAELi.institute. That's www.caeli.institute. What are some other books you would take with you?
Well, can I tell you about the Crazy Train?
Yes!
So Tad Mann has been an idol of mine, oh my God, since I was in my 20s. He's a good friend of Axel's, but I had never met him. But when I was first interested in astrology, so I was about 17, I guess, when I started, right? My father, who loves me even when he doesn't understand me, went out and found the prettiest astrology book he could find and gave it to me for Christmas/Yule. And it was The Round Arch. It is a hardcover tome of a book. So I don't know if it's something I put in my backpack because it's damn heavy, but it has everything. It has everything. And the artwork is just stunning. It even has a piece in the back with a novel approach to rectification, which is very sexy.
Wow.
Something that it's a little known approach to rectification. I mean, he's got it all. So Michael Luton decides he's going to rent an entire train car and he's going to sell the tickets to batshit crazy astrologers. Hi, that could be me. And so my mom, God love my mother, she paid for me to get a flight to Newark so that I could get to the Crazy Train. And then I was there with all these illustrious people and Tad. So I got to meet him. And it was so funny because I'm like, oh, I think the world of you. I'm a real groupie. I've thought, loved you, your work since I was, he said, don't say it. I said, why? He said, I don't want to know how old I am. I just really... So what a sweetie. He was really sweet. And we sat and chatted about Axel and other things. But yeah,
That's
it was
amazing.
nice to sit with somebody who knew my friend. I miss him. I miss Axel very much. Sometimes I feel like I'm not the only one doing the interpretation,
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally I get the funny feeling, like a nudge, like, have you looked here? I'm like,
So yes, the round art. I think it's lovely that there's also this continuity of being influenced by the visuals of this, and also with your kinetic learning style. Tad's books are always stunning. And he's looking at things in addition to astrology, like sacred geometry and architecture and various things around the world that are very key to expanding our sense of what even astrology can be if we take it into an archaeoastronomy position. And then to meet him in person on a train, that just is such a cool...
I was such a groupie, though.
Yeah.
I was like, can I have your autograph? Poor guy.
Yeah. Oh, he's all good. It's all good. Okay, so that's 2 books. What would your third book be?
I would say The Inner Sky by Stephen, and that would have been 1987. And a nice, sweet young man with black hair, I need to say.
He had black hair back then.
He had black hair. Sweet young man with black hair came into Ottawa. He'd come from Toronto. This is something that Donna Van Tone set up, where she would help us, all of the local clubs, to have really good quality speakers, because we would each only pay their trip from where they were coming from to us, and then forward. So everybody only paid a portion of the fees of the transportation, and and they got several gigs. And Donna Fantone, of course, as usual, organized that. Anyway, so he'd just come from TO and he was up in Ottawa. He gave a lovely lecture and I got a signed copy of his book with a purple pen. And I met him at UAC and, I know it was 40 years past, but, I knew who he was. How could he not know who I was? I reminded him of the book. I could see this dawning and like, oh, yeah. And then he says, well, time really has gone by, hasn't it? Meaning you don't look like you used to. I'm like, yeah, honey, neither do you.
I know. Yeah, no, now he looks like what is always that stunt double comparison between Rick Levine. Is it Rick Levine or Stephen Forrest? You decide.
Rick's kind of, Stephen's kind of, he's got that Capricorn leanness to him, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas Rick is, the
Cancerian.
Yeah, he has that kind of round bonhomie, that nice, like round Jupiterian kind of thing going on there. So
yeah, I think people in my generation had no idea that Stephen Forrest ever had black hair because it's always been white.
And he was very Capricornian, very sort of bony and, Yeah,
he even talks about that in the first part of his book here in The Inner Sky. Like that's one of the first things he shares is that he had, what does it say? Back in the 50s, when I was a little boy, I once put a quarter in a vending machine inscribed with paintings of various improbable creatures. Out came a packet containing a description of the traits associated with my sun sign, Capricorn. Like, in case you weren't aware, I'm a Capricorn. Now sit down. I've got a story for you about astrology.
Yeah, and what do I love about Stephen's book? He's clever enough to understand that the signs are verbs.
What does that mean to you?
So it's not I am a Capricorn, it is I am Capricorning.
Ooh.
So it's a journey. So when we choose our meat sack and we come flying into our meat sack and we arrive here and we kind of open our eyes and go, what did I get this time? Oh, this is interesting. Haven't had one of these for a while, and then we kind of get on our journey. You're not sort of in one place ever. You're just constantly evolving and moving forward, like progressions or like the unfolding petals of a flower. Mm-hmm. Even transits, it's weather and changes of season and so on. So, I liked that he understood that and used language to explain that well.
Mm-hmm. Very good. That would be very helpful if you're in a remote place because you could tune in. You could just sink in and just kind of understand like, hey, I might be here for now. I am unfolding and things will continue to unfold and maybe there's a way out of this remote place. Very cool. So if you were going to suggest a book for a beginner, what would be one or two titles you would throw at a new student of astrology at your Halifax Astrology School?
Well, I mean, I have these are online courses, so they're not really books per se. But I think, back to, I would say Debbi's book would be my starting point.
Secrets from a Stargazer's Notebook.
Why? Because it's so much to understand and to know. And Debbi did this really intelligent thing where she put the tables of the positions of the plus. So she has kind of mini ephemerides interspaced with each chapter. So I think she's got one called Yak Yak Tables. Where is your Mercury? And, this kind of thing. So you can quickly look it up. You don't have to go grab another book. This book has everything you need to keep learning. Of course, eventually it's not enough, right?
Yeah.
But it gets the bit between your teeth, I would say.
Right. And I think the title, like if you really roll it around on your tongue, it's like Secrets from a Stargazer's Notebook. It's like she's like, okay, sit down. I'm going to tell you some stuff. Right. And so it kind of jumps around different topics and gives you a lay of the land, but isn't necessarily like it teaches through this scattered concept in a way because you're getting meat. Like you said at the very beginning when you talked about her book, it's like very meaty, even though it seems irreverent,
100% meat from stem to stern, not an ounce of fat on that book. Yeah. Anything by Frawley, he's such a bad boy.
Yeah.
But I would
real astrology. Everybody else sit down. Boy. None of this is real. Only Frawley's books are real.
I know, but there's a part of me that likes that, color outside the lines, ride a motorcycle through the school kind of guy. So I'm okay with that, Yeah, he's unabashedly Frawley, isn't he?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't unleash him on like a beginner because you have to be at a place where you're prepared to push back.
Right. Yeah, I do wonder now in this new era of astrology, learning how it is for those who begin with traditional and have never had a basis in psychological and or humanistic. I'm just curious to see how that's going to play out, because I think that there's merits in learning all types of astrology. And I think it's harder to give psychological astrology the time of day after you've steeped in traditional methods.
I don't know.
It's harder to go the other way. I think it's easy to go from psychological into traditional because you go, oh, wow, there's rules. Like with horary, for example, like where's the lost object? It's either there or it's not, you know?
Yeah, it's more cut and dried.
But to go from a traditional basis and then be told like, well, Uranus rules Aquarius. And you're like, huh? And it's like, but in that reality tunnel.
Saturn rules Aquarius, but Uranus is definitely new kid on the block and he's vying for position. There's no doubt about it.
But for many, many years, there are books published here that claim otherwise, right? And so we have to go into the reality tunnels of those astrologies to try to understand what they were doing with it. And, you know, against the claims of like a Frawley, like that's not real astrology. And it's like, well, it was for some people at some point. And what was its social function? What was it doing? How was that way of looking helping?
Right. And I mean, I'm not going to knock Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, but Ed Tamplin, did you ever get a chance to meet Ed?
I'm not sure if I met him, but I'm aware of who he is.
He passed, unfortunately, and boy, we really need him right now. So he couldn't have left at a worse time because he was, I feel, I mean, Monsieur Barbault in the French world, but he was, in my opinion, the best mundane astrologer we had in the English-speaking world by far. And he taught me that the odors have to do with energy. So he said, think about it. Uranus, electricity. Neptune, oil and gas. Pluto, nuclear energy. So I'm kind of excited because if we discover something else, maybe there'll be a different kind of energy. So, you know, he showed me that. I thought, well, that's super, super slick. And it works. Thank you for showing me that. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, right?
Right. Right.
I was heartbroken. His database disappeared with him. When he was really sick, I didn't want to go, so can I have a copy of your database? I didn't want to be that guy. But now I wish I had because it didn't survive him. Yikes. And he had like all the charts of all the countries. Oh, by the way, Canada is not a Cancer baby. I did a little lecture called Will the Real Chart of Canada Please Stand Up? And I tried very hard to use a chart from the 1st of July. And I think Franco has one, Jennifer Ng has one. Like I used everybody's, whatever I could find. Brian Tressler has one. I tried everything. And Marilyn gave me this chart from March, actually, 29th of March, 1867, 11 a.m., Charlottetown, PEI. Damned if that thing doesn't work.
Wow.
It is so good. It just jumps every time, like if we have a war or if something's going on or change of government or whatever, it always responds beautifully.
Wow.
So it's kind of sweet because we're an intercepted Aries sun. And I'm trying to think which houses. I think Reggio, Koch, and Placidius. It's still intercepted. We have Cancer rising. So we want you to think we're really nice guys, but we're actually secret assholes. Which is kind of true. Like, take a look.
Should that be the title of our conversation today?
Canada, secret assholes. No, I just think it's cool anyway. So yeah, mundane. So I wish I could offer you a really good book on mundane. I have all the books by André Barbault. That's what I use for mundane. I have it in the English because I'm a lazy cow. I can read it in the French, but it's easier and it's translated. So somebody did all that work for me.
There you go.
So I would definitely recommend anything by André Barbault. Other than Ed, he's the one that predicted the COVID pandemic, right?
Yes, he did. Have you published your work on the real Canadian chart?
Well, I haven't published it, but I've done lectures on it. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe it should appear in a future publication from the library.
Oh, well, you'd be very welcome to it. I did a pretty thorough job because, like any other thing, I was passionate and I wanted to know. So it wasn't about proving myself right or wrong. I didn't really have a dog in the fight. I was genuinely wanting to find out which of these charts was going to do its job.
Sure. Yeah. And that's important work to do, actually, My first astrology teacher, Gary Lorenzen, has done work on the various charts for the United States and uses something called the Powell chart, which was a few days before we have our classic birthday, because that one also sings. But as he also says in that work with mundane, there's more than one chart for an entity of this nature. There's the de jure, the de facto, and various charts function in different ways, especially I think for countries that refound themselves over and over again. Like theoretically each of those charts should sing at some point along the way, even if that government form has left.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, anything else you'd like to put on the map before we conclude today?
Well, I'm going to give Chris a little nudge because I think he wrote a good book, his Hellenistic book. For those of us who didn't start out with traditional astrology, you're an editor. I think you'll agree with me. You can tell if it's a good book if it has a good index.
Yes, the tools of the trade.
So this book has a great index. From that point of view, you don't have to necessarily read it stem to stern. If you're hunting a particular thing, you go to the index, you find it, bang. Mm-hmm. And it's succinct and clear, and it doesn't muck around. So I do like that. Very
cool. Very cool. Well, thank you for your time today, and good luck with your Red Seal project with the Halifax Astrology School. I can't wait to hear about your success as you achieve that milestone.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah, we'll talk soon.
Thank you for listening to Within Orb. To learn more about the Celestial Arts Education Library, or to become a member, visit our website at CAELi.institute. That's www.caeli.institute. If you enjoyed this episode, please help spread the word. Follow or subscribe to Within Orb in your podcatcher of choice, rate it 5 stars, or write us a happy review. This helps others find the show. We also want to give a big thanks to the indie band The E-Block for contributing their song Wake Up for our intro and outro music. You can find them at their website, eblockband.com. This is Jenn Zahrt, signing off for now. See you next time.